Hello, good evening and welcome everyone. I'm Catherine Jordan, back again for week 19 of our conversations on community resilience in changing times. No, not week 19, week 18. We're nearly at week 19, which will be the last of our pilot series. This is our penultimate session of the pilot series, week 18. And this week we are talking, our title is on reflections and visions. David, what is reflections and visions? What are we going to be talking about this evening?
So reflections and visions. Let's talk about reflection first. There's a small group of us tonight, as well as our stalwarts, our regulars, Catherine and Kathy. I think we're going to be joined shortly, if we haven't already been joined, yes, by Oliver, who's been listening to us from the early days. So be fascinating to get perspective from someone who I don't think any of us have ever met before. And we're going to be talking about how things have been in the oh dear, bit of a continuity problem here. How it's been for us. I rehearsed this so carefully. I've got the wrong bit of paper. So how it's been for us over the last few months. And a few pertinent questions. What stood out for us in our involvement in community resilience live talks, whether it's been as panelists or as facilitators, or Catherine who's originated this, or as a behind the scenes helper or as a listener. What was useful? What are the challenges that came up for us in our involvement and the opportunities that arose from those challenges? And was there anything that came out of left field that just took us completely by surprise? And that's going to be probably the first hour to guess. It's going to be quite loose and informal tonight. And then we're going to go into visions, where me, Catherine, and Kathy are going to be talking about how we want to take community resilience live talks forward. Where do we want to be in a few months or maybe a year? So lots of exciting stuff to talk about tonight. Some sharing, some reminiscence. I can't wait.
Great, thanks, David. Nice summing up there of what we'll be doing tonight. So I'll just invite us all to firstly just introduce ourselves, just say our name and where we're joining this call from and what's been our involvement in the project so far. Anyone fancy starting that off? Go for it.
So I am Kathy Hilton. I'm in Lancashire, which is in the middle of the UK. I got involved with the project through having a friendship with Catherine and seeing Catherine asking for speakers and connecting Catherine with lots of people who I thought were experts, who I thought should speak, who I thought these people had plenty more expertise than me, and finding that other people were not relating to themselves in that way, and thinking, well, I know about these things. So I started joining in, and it's been an amazing platform for me to experience myself as having wisdom and knowledge. I have studied quite a lot in the last couple of years from my perspective of what the world needs to be resilient and what we need to build a more nourishing world than we have right now for people and our ecosystems. And for me, it's been an amazing vehicle to be able to put that to some use. And so I've taken more and more of an active role in the project, and I'm really appreciating the opportunity and it being a vehicle for shaping the world that I'm committed to.
Kathy has been really amazing in the background. I mean, for anyone who's been following the series, you'll know she's been quite heavily involved in the live conversations. I think you're actually doing the last 4 live consecutive calls. So And you've done, well, I think you've done at least six it'll be in total, I think, isn't it? Something like that. Anyway, but she's also been helping a lot in the background and been supporting me and helping with funding applications and lots of other things. So I'm really grateful for Kathy's involvement. And I've really enjoyed seeing you shine your knowledge in this project so far. Yeah, it's been really nice to know that about you. So yeah. So yeah, I can go next. So I'm Katherine Jordan. I am in Devon. So I'm in Paynton in Devon. And my involvement in the project so far has been creating it and coming up with this wacky idea to do this every week. Committing to doing that, come what may. So it's just been an interesting challenge for me. Challenge and kind of, well, yeah, it's been a mixture of things, a real mixture of things. It has been a challenge at times. It has been really insightful and colourful in so many ways, meeting so many amazing people. I think we've had a total of just under 40 speakers altogether. So I've been involved with, you know, a different group each week and supporting each group to, well, collaborating with each group is probably a better way of saying it, to share these live conversations on these really important topics. And it's been really insightful for me. I've learned a lot. I don't know if I can capture in what we're going to do tonight, what I've learned from it personally, but I've learned a lot. I've been really impacted by it, and it's definitely got me on my toes in terms of what I'm doing in terms of community resilience in my life. So if nothing else, I think it's been positive for that. So yeah, so that's me.
Okay, I'm happy to go next. I'm David. I'm another friend of Katherine's who rather excitedly got roped in by Katherine. So I got this message out of the blue a few months ago. Do you want to have this particular role in my project? And it was an immediate yes. So I just had to say yes. And it's been a really interesting experience. To start with, my role was simply to do what I'm doing tonight, which is to link the event as it's relayed on Facebook to the relay event as it's happening on Zoom. So if you have any questions or comments, stick them in the comments box and I shall relay them to the panelists so that they can be explored. So that if you've been involved and you have any comments or observations or experiences arising from listening and watching to what we've been doing, whether you've just watched us once or many times, we'd love to hear from you. So that's how I started, and that was an experience in itself. And then also I've seemed to ended up chipping in with sort of ideas about what we could do and, you know, topics and who we could invite. So I'm now on the steering group. So I've had my first meeting, which is really interesting and really exciting. And I feel for me, this is about sort of learning to say yes and just giving without thinking about it too much. And I've also been on one hair-raising occasion a panelist. Talk about a steep learning curve. Okay, so that will do for now. Thank you. So if you see my head switching from one side to another, it's because I'm having to keep my eye on the computer as well.
You, Oliver?
Hi, yeah, so I'm Oliver, but people call me Ollie, and I'm zooming in from South London near Lambeth, borough of South London. I'm kind of between Brixton and Crystal Palace. And really, I've been a lurker, if you like, on these amazing live sessions. Not that many in real time live. I've watched quite a few recordings in sort of after time, and that's been really useful to have that flexibility to dip in and out. I think only in one live session I was sort of chatting, and it was nice to get real time responses back. But yeah, I just want to say how wonderful it's been to see you, Katherine, and Kathy kind of bouncing off each other with guest speakers, and how inspiring, you know, really that's been, to how you've explored different topics that have been very close to my heart. And those topics being food growing, probably is pretty high up there as number one. There's an early session kind of on COVID and spirituality that actually was the first one that got me really hooked, but we can go into that in more detail later. And yes, there was a number actually that I was like, okay, this feels like a group for me, and it really worked. Yeah, I work full-time in a university, and outside of that full-time work I am involved in a certain amount of environmental activism and connecting with other community groups. Yeah, and I'll leave it for there for now. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to hearing more about your experience of it so far. Thank you. So Kathy, I'm handing over to you to ask us some questions.
Okay, so the first question is, what have we found useful in this project? And I don't know who would like to answer that question first. Who would like to answer that question first? What have we found useful? Catherine.
Yeah, I can answer. I think that one of the things that's or there's two of the talks that have happened so far that we've done part twos to both of them that's still really working on me. One of them is Dismantling Conquest and Sandra White's work, which I'm still really exploring that personally, and it's been really insightful into my own relational struggles and what can get in the way of collaboration. So I've really appreciated that, and that's still an ongoing thing. And food resilience, particularly what the research that you've done and what you shared around that was so inspiring. I still really remember the moment when I think I asked the question, if you're living in the middle of a city and you haven't got a garden and you haven't got an access to, what can you do? And you were able to answer that question. And this feeling in my heart when you did that, I was like, wow, we can speak to that, you know. We can speak to someone who would seemingly have no opportunities to engage in food resilience. You gave a really great answer to that question. There was something about that moment for me that was just very enlivening and exciting. So because I think often when we think about food resilience, we think, oh, we need to have land and we need to have, you know, money, we need to have that. But actually what you presented was we don't have to have any of that and we still have options. And so that was really exciting for me. So I'm still looking at how to apply that in my life, but that's definitely two things that really stand out as being useful. Yeah.
That's very good to hear, Catherine, on all counts. Ollie?
Yeah, there's been lots to take away, but what I found, one of the ones that I found the most useful to me personally is because I think I've lived a fairly, being white, coming from a fairly lucky background, you know, I've had a fortunate upbringing, but I have always had financial struggles, and I've always really never seemed to have felt like I've never had enough. And I remember you talking, Kathy, about what one of your sessions was about our relationship with money and finance, and actually being able to, when you're really struggling and you're feeling under the cosh and you're just kind of feel browbeaten about how to turn that round incrementally and little by little, and just feel like, well, actually, you know, this is a state that isn't insurmountable, and that yeah, so the bit of changing my relationship with what I perceived as a kind of stranglehold of poverty was the most useful to me personally. Now that for me was kind of my biggest takeaway one. But having said that, there were a lot of other sessions that have really fed into things that I'm involved with on I live on a council estate, and it's a very nice council estate. We have quite a good network, and I'm very fortunate to have one or two neighbours who are incredibly active on the food growing and claiming back sort of bits of land to create a mini community orchard and community garden. And for me, the conversation you both had with Motin, wow, what an amazing guy, love him. And that for me was like, oh my God, that's so practical. there were so many practical takeaway lessons from growing food on your balcony to actually getting engaged with communities and groups, and also Kathy's your very long extensive list of helpful food networks I found incredibly relevant to what I'm interested in. There's more to that sort of food network collaboration is in the environmental activist groups that I'm in. There's a lot of talk about, especially during COVID, we had the system of mutual aid in the area for people who are really hard up. So food cooking and growing and distribution centres have cropped up, you know, and we have some of the biggest food banks probably in the UK, some not far from me in Streatham, where I know a few people, and those networks are starting to connect up in ways that maybe they hadn't before. So there's, yeah, I'd quite like to maybe talk a bit later about some of those ideas of how connecting different groups like food banks, like the mutual aid people, and like the environmentalists and the community Lambeth food growing have actually starting to sort of come together to work out how we might vision something better for the future in terms of food resilience. Yeah, so there's been a lot for me to take away just on that front, even, but there's been more besides.
That's great to hear, Ollie. That's really great feedback. It makes me think of another question, which is, do you remember how you found we existed in the first place?
Yes, it was through a Facebook group, I believe, that I heard of Catherine talking about the resilient communities idea in a group called Deep Adaptation.
Okay.
And it was through that I tuned in very kind of, I guess it was fate.
Well, it's great to hear that it's been doing the intended job. So thank you for the feedback. David, do you want to answer what you have found useful?
I think really it's been an excellent antidote to the stay-at-home COVID blues. You know, stuck in my own world, living on my own, going round and round in circles inside of myself, which is not healthy for anyone. And suddenly out of nowhere, I get this invitation, almost came out as information. Maybe it was information. We've got something for you to do from the universe. And I think for me, it's about being reminded I have something to give and have something unique to give. And that's been really exciting. But also, I think in the process of doing that, learning how to get out of the way, how I get in the way and how I get out of the way. And that showed up when I did as a panelist, and I kind of got it into my head, and it's God, was that a learning curve? And then I think also the fascinating thing of being involved in something and it comes alive, really comes alive at the point when I say, well, I'm not doing this to get anything out of it. I'm just doing it for the sake of it. And the paradox of that. And it's very interesting watching what's happened in my life since I really said, you know what, I'm absolutely full on with this. And my paid work has just changed enormously since that point, which has been really interesting. So it's something about saying yes and just being passionately committed to something, which has been an eye-opener, really.
I love that answer, David. That means so much to me because it correlates very strongly with my view. So what I have found useful is not even the content of the talks. It's been the growing of me. So I was somebody who really wanted an opportunity to contribute in the world, and was looking through professional spaces, but feeling like I didn't have the experience to contribute. I'd left my previous line of work because I felt it was unethical to continue, because it was promoting consumption, it was promoting materialism, and fundamentally that's such an ecological issue. So I'd left that line of work, and I knew I had gifts, but I had no vehicle for them. And I think one of the things this project has done really well is the sense of everybody's welcome, and everybody has you don't have to be super professional. You don't have to turn up and perform. You turn up as you are. You know, resilience is fundamentally, resilience has to honor our humanity. And if you're performing, you're exhausting yourself. So if you turn up in your true state and bring what gifts you have, then that is how we build anything resilient. So that's been hugely beneficial as a learning, but also understanding that people have agency. I think this is what the world really needs. So I feel like our society developed so much into us all being basically selfish, basically building our well-being, our individual well-being. So our nests, our homes, our bank accounts, our individual successes, and those of our loved ones, and expecting the government to sort out everything else, sort out the country, sort out the ecological crises and societal crises. And it's been interesting and weird that it's been certainly more than a decade, for some people, many decades, of seeing how much things needed to change, certainly from an ecological point of view, and how ineffective we as a population, we as a globe, have been in changing. So I came to appreciate we can't rely on the government to make those changes, and the world is only going to improve because of the number of people who take it on for themselves. And people taking it on for themselves need opportunities. We need to come together, and this for me has been a start of that, and I'm enormously grateful for that opportunity, and for myself personally, but also to be able to encourage other people to take agency, to notice that they have agency, and that has become a real mission for me is to empower people within their agency, so that we have this population of people able to act out what I believe is our true nature, which is to collaborate and to build good things. And that has all been somewhat muffled by different aspects of society for the last century or so. So looking to empower that has become a mission because of how I've grown through this project. And I've got a whole pile of plans for how I'm going to do that, so I'm excited about that. That's my answer for what's been useful. And there also have been extraordinary learnings. I think, as Catherine mentioned, Sandra White's model for that she discussed during Dismantling Conquest, I find to be one of the most intelligent and societal changing pieces of work I've ever come across. And I encourage everybody to go back and look at that first talk on Dismantling Conquest. And I know we're gonna, I know Catherine has planned a workshop for people to have a chance to get more familiar with that work. I feel it enables us to have compassion for each other and work with each other when we would normally go into resentment, give up on other people. It gives us access to a completely different level of love and all that comes out of that, all where we normally get stopped, resent, give up on people, become siloed in our own little worlds. It gives us access to move beyond all of that, and that is fundamentally what we need to master. I don't want to say what we need to master. If we were to master that, it changes everything. So it's an incredible piece of work, and I'm very, very excited to have been introduced to it and look forward to learning more about it. That is our conversation about, I was going to say that's our conversation about what we've found useful, but Catherine wants to say something more. So Catherine, what more would you like to say?
Just I generally don't like going first in answer to things, because I always have more things that come up and I forget. And then I'm like, oh yeah, no, this and this and this as well. Just a couple of things I wanted to add. Just that David is just going to share a link in the chat box on the Facebook for a little highlights video I did of Sandra's model, if anyone's interested in that, and a bit of information about the workshop. And the other thing I wanted to mention was the spiritual leadership conversation, which I think was, wow, I mean, it had such an impact on me. It kind of knocked me over for about best part of a week anyway. It had such an impact on me. And one of the things that's been really left with me as a learning point from that was something that Justine Huxley said around our relationship to suffering, that we need to kind of get real about our relationship to suffering. And I think particularly in English culture, we can be very moany, we moan about the weather, we moan about this, something in English culture that's very ingrained around that. And I have lots of non-English friends, so I have quite a healthy perspective on seeing that in our culture, I think. And it has really made me think about that. It's really made me think about, you know, the reality of where we are now and what we may well be facing. And are we really suffering right now? Not really. We've got a roof over our head. We've got food to eat every day. You know, we've got the internet. We've got, you know, all these things. We've got no worries about our water supply. You know, we're not really suffering. Like, come on, this isn't real suffering. But there was something about her saying that sort of pulled me up on it in a way that I found really helpful and really useful. I was really grateful to be pulled up on that. And I really like the story she shared, which I won't quote because I can't remember the detail, but I think it was like a Tibetan monk or something who was reflecting on his previous experience compared to when he really did then suffer. So that is something out of the talks that's also really stayed with me, and has been very useful in sort of getting real on some level, I think. So yeah, just wanted to add that. Thanks.
We're going to pick up on that next week, aren't we? So we've got a session next week following up our conversation on work and money. And we have a woman joining us who is living in a nation that has gone from being prosperous to a degree of societal collapse. And it's giving us the opportunity to see how blinkered we are to the solutions that we're forming, because the solutions that we're forming are naive. And she's bringing a really informed perspective next week.
And I think when we did the planning session with her, I mean, I was really impacted by what she's got to share around her experience, and it did make me think we're actually now in a position of real agency in the UK. You know, this is a time where actually we've got all these things still available to us. We can actually really work on forward-thinking solutions now that may not be available to us as collapse may continue, as we are kind of seeing it might do. So that was one thing that I really took away from the planning session, which looking forward to sharing more of her story, because I think it's really inspiring. But yeah, it made me realize that we've got a lot we can do right now, and let's get on with that. You know, like let's not dwell on what is the other things that we could be dwelling on. Let's get working on what we can be doing right now, which actually there's a lot we can be doing right now, definitely. Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking now.
Okay, I'm wanting to presence the context again for this session. So my commitment for this session is that we learn all that we can about what has been effective and how we can make these talks the best that they can be, how we can maximize what we bring to the world, and how to empower the world in all the ways that we might. The next question that I have is what stood out to us, but I'm questioning, I'm questioning whether that's the best question to be answering, whether it's the best question to ask, not least because we've kind of covered some of that already. So Catherine, what do you think?
Well, I like your inquiry to actually, what's the best time out of this? What's the best use of this time? And something that's already sort of stood out for me as a question in terms of the post is what Oliver said about that it's been really useful to watch it back. And, you know, there's been some question of me around the format, you know, is there value in having it live? Is there value in turning it into a podcast and putting it on YouTube? And I've been questioned a lot on that. And my answer is, I come back to is, yes, I want to make it as accessible as possible. So yeah, let's make it available on all of that. Why not? You know, let's make it a live conversation so we can get an actual direct live engagement. Let's turn it into a podcast. Let's put it on YouTube. Let's just, you know, make it as accessible as possible. But yeah, it's nice to hear that feedback that actually that works for someone, that actually they can't always join live because of work commitments and stuff. And I get that. And I'm aware that looking at the statistics and things, that it's the conversations are getting a lot more after watch or listen than they are live. So I'm imagining that's the case for other people, but it's nice to hear that. So that's just a question that stood out for me is, you know, how can we keep making it accessible to people, and what are the best ways to do that? So that was just a question that came up for me.
Yeah, I see that. I see we have been doing really well in that regard. That's definitely a value. And for me as a speaker, one of my trip ups is perfectionism. So it's enormously useful to be live because it's just tough. Like, you did what you did, it's over. you can't go back and perfect it. And in fact, somebody that we wanted to join us today, I think is really still in that trip. He is still in the perfectionism, so he doesn't have the confidence to speak. And as you can see me stuttering over my sentences, I think it's enormously valuable to just go for it. And it's lovely to hear from people that it's effective. And I so want everybody to appreciate their own agency and step up and be part of building the world with whatever gifts you have. I really, really want it. And we all have reasons not to, like perfectionism. And there are ways around it all, like going live. And it's great that we have the different opportunities for people to be involved. I would encourage more people to offer themselves as speakers. I definitely would like to think that we are inclusive. We do want all sorts of different levels of expertise and backgrounds, and you don't have to be the most knowledgeable person. So that is a way that we can go forward. That is something we want going forward. Does anybody have anything to add about what has been working and what hasn't been working, what we might consider changing, something you might have seen in a different project that we could bring in and that would make us stronger? Has anybody got anything to address in that realm?
Well, if I may, I'll step in. I think the formats worked really, really well, and I like the fact there's a lot you've pushed yourselves to give a kind of live element to it, and actually that invitation to step up and to just be free of having a well-performed script is I would echo, you know, it's not an easy thing to do for most people. I mean, I do a fair amount of actual presenting in my work, even though I think I said to Catherine that, oh, I'm not a very experienced public speaker, but I think maybe compared to most people, I actually probably am. But so traversing the barrier between audience watchers, or, you know, online, the term online lurkers that we use in our university, because students feel very comfortable just consuming and absorbing content, and it's not that they're not engaging, and we falsely assume that people who are just watching without putting a comment in the chat or offering themselves are not engaging. Some people at their different stages in their lives, that's the best that they can engage. They've engaged by offering the time to watch that, even if it's a post recording. It's a form of engagement, and I think leaving the channels open to have people participate in whatever small way they can, and like Kathy, you just did before, there was kind of to invite people to say you don't have to be an expert in your field. If the call out is to build a community, a conversation, a community to build a wider conversation, then that's completely open to everyone and anyone. But these things do need facilitating, don't they? You have to have, I think, some guidance to what the topic and the direction of the conversation goes in. It's quite hard to just free flow from absolutely nothing. I've tried. I do a lot of work. In my work this year has been really interesting for me, where this what exactly what you're talking about right now, since COVID and since George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, most universities are going through a huge decolonizing the curriculum shift. There's a mindset of going, what are we doing? What's led to this situation? You know, despite the Sewell report, everyone knows there is a fundamental institutional problem with racism, and institutional and colonial factors have created a lot of the problems that non-white people face. And so what in my work, something that's helped me, for some reason I've been called to, when you talked about stepping up, this is where I've stepped up to in my work, is to help. There's a group of us, there's a small core team who have helped create this decolonizing network in my university. I work at University of the Arts, London. It's an art college based university. So you've got Central St Martin's, London College of Fashion, LCC, Chelsea, Camberwell from Wimbledon. Anyway, it's kind of 6 old art colleges all joined into one. They're all spread out over London. It's quite a big thing. And I just work at London College of Fashion. And just within that one college, there's a massive diversity of staff. And the higher up you go, up the kind of research and senior management scale, someone's described it as a pint of Guinness. You know, it gets whiter and whiter the nearer the top you get. And that's kind of reflective, I think, of all sorts of, but in London, in my particular college, where it is very diverse, it's just interesting. And the challenge has been to open networks to kind of discuss, and the key thing for me to make online, we've had weekly online sessions, we call them tea and coffee meetings, to not necessarily focus it just about racism and inequality, even though that's been a fundamental point of it, is to kind of give a space of informality in a very bureaucratic system where normally you have a conference and you have a very structured approach, and you have a manager who's telling, you know, a coordinator who's telling someone else to do something. It's all very hierarchical, actually, and actually just challenging the usual hierarchical structure in how we have meetings, and just make it informal, make it a chat, but it still takes someone to kind of help coordinate the chat. And that's been a process that has led us to create a manifesto to challenge the senior management, and the whole of the senior management, including the new Vice Chancellor, have suddenly paid attention to this kind of group of technicians, kind of where, you know, the voice has sprung up from the ground up, and we're trying to bring up like the cleaners with us, and we're trying to bring up students with us and say, well, actually, we don't need this structure. Let's just flatten it a little bit, and let's just co-work it out. Let's collaborate a lot more. And that's been a wonderful process. Yeah.
It sounds it, Ollie. Thank you so much for telling us that. I do hear such a groundswell of changes in culture. It is incredible to watch, and I hope it gives people a sense it really is worth playing your part. I do feel we're on a fundamental shift. David, what did you wish to add? David, you're muted.
We can't ask the nice people on Spotify to lip read, can we? Now, yes, Wendy Vina Freeman, who collaborated delightfully and fantastically on our 2 food programs. What's the word? Yes, it's not polished, and this is live, has commented twice. First of all, great to see your faces. Agree with Kathy. I love participating. Knowing who I am was enough, and of value to the community. I'm not having to try to present some kind of professional front. And then the next comment from Kathy. Responding to Kathy's question about what's working, I think, like Oliver, that the format is wonderful. And I want to also commend both Katherine Jordan, who has a brilliant interviewing facilitation persona and style, and Kathy Hilton for all you have put into this project and all the wisdom and challenge that you have brought. And David L. for your brilliant tech support and having Katherine's back. I look forward to great things for this project. What a nice thing to be told.
It's really nice. Thanks, Wendy. Nice to have your comments.
It is really nice. And say that again, David.
All the way from Portugal.
It is nice, and I want to make the point that for me as a speaker, there's been almost no feedback. I don't mean from Katherine. I've had feedback from Katherine, but from the public. So Oliver, your comments today were the second time I've heard, after whatever it's been, 6-8 sessions that I've spoken on, of that. It's been this from Ollie, it's been the second time I've heard of impact. And I mentioned that to point out to people who are listening that just feeding back to us is an act of resilience. It's an act of encouragement. It's an act of building. So if you comment, if you feed back to us, then if it's something you see we can improve, great. If it's something to tell us how we have contributed to you, then you grow us, and please grow us, because we want to be the best that we can be, and it does feel like existing in something of a vacuum. That's an encouragement to be in communication with us. Katherine, what would you like to add?
I was just going to say something that's been quite interesting in my role, speaking to a number of people about being involved. It's been very often people will say, I don't think I'm qualified to speak on this. I'm not an expert. And then I will say to them, so what would you say on this topic? And then they'll say something, and the passion and the intelligence is bountiful. And I'm like, yeah, great, that's it. That's, it's there, you've got it. And sort of, a big part of my role has been sort of like kind of what Oliver just said, like dismantling that thing of we think we need to be experts, because we're all in this, we're all impacted by climate change, we're all impacted by food systems, no matter where we sit in all of this, we are all, during the pandemic, I think we've been really leveled as well, so that's been quite an interesting role for me to kind of actively dismantle this thing. I need to be an expert to speak on this topic, because I'm not an expert on any of it, and I'm definitely not an expert in terms of being a facilitator or a presenter. I'm working it out as I'm going, very, very much so. So I feel like I'm role modeling that, because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm kind of working it out as I'm going, but I get fairly good feedback, so that's always helpful. But yeah, it sort of ties in with what's already been said. And if people do want to get involved, and I will speak a bit more about things we are going to, with sort of ideas for the next phase of things. And if people would like to speak, Oliver, I definitely would like to get you on one of our live calls, another one of our live calls. Yes, definitely. Yeah, do get in touch. And like Kathy said, feedback is great. It's nice to hear how it's impacting people. That helps to feed and inform what we're doing. And please don't feel like you have to be an expert. If you've got a passion on something, that's probably enough generally. Like, there's always intelligence in that somewhere. And I'm happy to have a chat with you, or one of us is happy to have a chat with you about what you feel you have to offer, and we can kind of be honest about whether we think that would be useful for the live call or not. So dare to get in touch and share what you think you've got to share. It's better to do that than not. So yeah, thanks.
Great. David.
So I have a very simple question on the back of that. With all the podcast formats, does that give people the...
David, you muted.
So let's start again. So with all the podcast formats, when people find us as a podcast, is there the facility there for getting in touch?
Yeah, good point. No, there isn't. That's the only format in which there isn't a direct way to give feedback. So YouTube, you can just comment. Facebook, obviously, you can comment, or you can message us on the group. Podcast, I don't know if anyone knows of easy way to do that. I mean, I can add in, we are going to have a website soon, so I can add that on. But yeah, at the moment, there isn't a good way, an easy way. Yeah.
We could just add an email address.
Can do. Yeah, I can add that on.
Maybe can you comment on every podcast with the email address? Would that be a solution?
Yeah, I can do that. I can add that. Yeah.
Tell us what the email address is, please.
Email address is communityresilience@gmail.com.
Grand.
You could add some. Sorry to button. You could add something like, is there an issue you have a passion about? Would you like to be a panelist?
Yeah.
Good touch. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is always nice to hear from people and nice to hear the feedback, because it just informs them, what we're doing, and we can include more of the bigger, wider perspective outside of ourselves, which is always helpful. Thanks.
It is a perfect segue then into, what are we imagining we're doing next? What have we understood to be the strengths of what we're bringing, and how has that informed what we're planning next? Who would like to speak about that? I vote Catherine. Oh, Ollie wants to contribute. Tell us, Ollie.
Well, just framing that question is I think the important thing, and sort of the power of imagination, and as getting into the practice of, in a collective group, to work out a vision that works for various groups. I mean, I can sit on my own in my own room, in my own home, with my notebook, kind of thinking of the future that I would like, but until you speak it out to other people, and they can reflect back to you, I think that, so the power of visioning workshops is monumental, and it can't be sort of highlighted or kind of emphasized enough, I don't think, because we're in that transition stage where we've been festering or composting. I like the word I've been hearing around. We've had the time to really digest, kind of not only in our social network groups, but in this kind of COVID world as well, where everything's kind of ground to a bit of a halt and everything's changed a bit. But now I think it's time that those networks are starting to kind of connect up, and when they connect up is when it's like, where do we go next from here? And they're talking of kind of recreating structures kind of outside of government structures, and or Lambeth, or whatever local council I live in Lambeth, and we have issues with them doing things that aren't particularly beneficial for people who live on certain estates, or who are not particularly good at recycling or reusing the grass that's cut just outside our doors. We can actually repurpose that. It's just having those conversations and having shared visions of, okay, well, this is a good idea. Let's set up, food cooperatives and seed swapping, or whatever it might be, in a collective group. I think it really empowers you. So I've been involved in local transition town movements. We've got quite a big one in Crystal Palace, and a relatively small but very active one in Brixton, so Transition Town Brixton. And through those networks, there've been a series of very powerful visioning workshops, and I've set one up with Sue Sheehan, who set up, one of the co-founders in Brixton, and actually it's been really interesting working with those transition town people who've been at it for a lot longer than I have. So it's been nice to get working out how to run visioning workshops, and strangely they have all started sort of coming together. We're looking at kind of creating a centre, so kind of by having a series of visioning workshops, I think it helps you go on to the next level relatively quickly. It seems to have happened here. Yeah, so where I live, we're looking at reclaiming empty shops, and it's happening all over the country through something called climate and ecological centres, CEC centres, and it's just an opportunity for going, okay, well, some of the high streets are dying or emptying out, or the William Hill betting shops have all gone bust. There's land and space to be used maybe for better purpose now. And actually, if you set yourself up as a charity or a community group, you can get the landowner or the kind of property developer doesn't have to pay service charge if it's used for community. So there are these temporary pockets happening all over the country that are offering themselves up to kind of pulling different networks together, and it's basically been through my involvement in visioning workshops with transition towns and some of the environmental groups I've been in that have gone, actually, let's pull these bits together. Yes, I can't emphasize enough the need, I think, for visioning, and it's like putting it's like manifesting a dream or a prayer or a wish. It's like, what would the future be like if I could have my wish? And when you collectively pull those wishes together, they become really strong and powerful. Yeah, so more power to them.
I'm so glad you've told us all that, Oliver. That's really wonderful to hear.
Thinking, Kathy, that's something we need to add onto our website, is a place where people can just share all the local projects that are going on.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's like, how do we kind of, you know, because something about supporting things at a really simple ground level, just like what are little things that people are doing. Like I hear about, you know, streets doing stuff together. You know, I think you just said something in your community, like, and can that be shared to inspire another community of a model of how to do that and stuff like that? So maybe that's something we can grow and develop on the website.
Yeah, we to share with everybody, we had a steering group Zoom, and Catherine and I have had other conversations as well, and I feel like we've been around a loop and we haven't really reached decisions about what the world needs, what part we play, and we have two very conflicting truths in that at the moment. So one is to have a niche, do it really well, and have it be enough, and that's the talks. So we get feedback that we are doing the talks well, and that they have a place, and that they set things in motion. That's true. And then something that contradicts that and is also true is that talking isn't enough, and what does the world need? And we're still in that inquiry. So in my world, I would like us to have answered that before this session, and we haven't. So we model continual inquiry. And we've got two things definitely going forward. And as Catherine said, we're imagining a website. We're thinking, what does it actually need? What does the world actually need? We started imagining that something called a community resilience network would be very valuable. And I think we're still debating the pros and cons of whether that's our role or whether some other people are doing that, and what our way forward is. But I know that we have got clarity on talks. I know the talks are definitely going to continue and that they have a great momentum. We did a funding application, which was very useful because it made us focus on what we are doing well, and it also brought up the question of, is it enough? Is it enough, or do we need to be sure that we're having impact in the world? And out of that came the idea of something we're calling community resilience advocates. And we set ourselves the challenge of having 100 people within a year tell us that this project has inspired them to strengthen the resilience of their community in some way. This is our target, so that we know we're doing a good job, so that we know it's worth it, we know we're having impact. I'm going to come back and talk about community resilience advocates a little later, but I think it's worth, Catherine, you speaking about what we're planning for the talks.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kathy. So I'm going to share my screen. I've just prepared a, oh no, we've got, what have we got now? I don't know what we've got here. That wasn't what I meant to share. Hold on 1 second. Oh, that because also I pulled up the YouTube video. I don't listen to Lady Gaga, honestly. I don't know where that came from. Oh, that's funny. Okay, let's try that again. Am I currently screen sharing? No, I'm not. Okay, let's try that again. Oh, the joys of being live. You have to learn to be fallible, hey? Okay. That's still not on the right bit. Let's try again. 1 second. Why is it not on the right bit? My brain isn't quite working today. I think that's what it is. Right, okay, here we go. So let's try that for the third time. Third time lucky, eh? Okay, yay. Right, we're on the right page now. So Community Resilience Live Talk. So this is, yeah, as Kathy mentioned, we have done a funding application to run this project for a year, which we're very hopeful that will get funded. And then this is kind of, you know, part of what we looked at in that application is, you know, what we envisage this project doing for the next year. And as Kathy said, there has been some debate about what is the value in just having these live talks. You know, do they have value in their own right? And I know lots of people have said yes they do, and don't underestimate that. That's a lot of what I've heard, because I think there's, particularly when you're talking about funding, there's a real sort of impetus to get caught in that, oh, we need to be doing more, we need to be taking this somewhere else. And I think there is real value in just sparking thinking and sparking a new way of considering things. I think that has value in its own right, but we're still exploring, yeah, elements around that. So anyway, this is where we've got to so far. So this is as I said, week 18 of the pilot series, and this is the penultimate session. We will be finishing it next week on Tuesday the 25th with part 2 of our conversation on work and money. We've got a very interesting perspective coming in that, so I won't say more about that because you can tune in and enjoy that next week. So that will be our last session of the pilot series. We will then officially launch the project on Tuesday the 6th of July. So we'll basically have a break. We'll have a month's break in between the pilot series and then launching the project officially on the 6th of July, in which time we'll be working on the website, which we'll also be launching. And we're then planning to run the project for a year, where we will have a rhythm of 7 weeks on and 1 week off. And then that will run through for the next year. So I haven't kind of fixed any sort of definites for the project so far, but 2 things we have said as part of our funding application that we'd like to include is these 2 things. One is Indigenous wisdom. So we are speaking, or I'm speaking to some Indigenous elders and inviting them to share their wisdom with us and guidance for these times. So I'm planning to do a series of Indigenous wisdom talks somewhere in the year. And something else that came particularly out of our family and parenting sessions is young people and how we can support young people to be part of these conversations. because I think, as someone who works with young people, and Oliver, you'll probably understand this as well, our young people are feeling climate change and societal breakdown in a way that's much more direct, I think, than what we are. You know, a lot of our young people are experiencing a lot of anxiety and just general unrest, and it's because they're physically feeling these things happening in a way that I think the older cultures are a bit more disconnected from. So I feel really passionate about creating a space for our young people to share what they're experiencing, and also sharing their visions for what we can be doing, because as we saw with Greta Thunberg and what happened with her movement, you know, they have a wisdom, our young people have a wisdom in them, and I really want to hear that wisdom. I really want to hear what's in them as a response to what's happening and give them a space to be heard. So that's something we're going to be exploring. This is very unformed at the moment, but yeah, what gets in the way of collaboration? So I'm just thinking about what gets in the way of collaboration and community resilience. So things like discrimination, polarized thinking, prejudice, you know, social inequality, financial inequality, those kind of things. So yeah, what gets in the way and how can we overcome those things so that we can develop real kind of equality-based resilience? And we will be launching Community Resilience Advocates program, which Kathy mentioned she's going to talk more about in a minute. So for now, we haven't got a website at the moment, but we will be launching a website in July. So ways to sort of get in touch with us for now is these three places. Facebook page, so it's at Community Resilience Live Talks. You can follow us on YouTube and you can comment on there, and I do pick up the comments on YouTube, so do drop us a comment on YouTube if you watch it on there. You can follow us on Spotify and Apple Music. As we mentioned, you can't comment directly there, but you can email us or you can message us on one of the other platforms if you want to get in touch, share your thoughts and your ideas. We'd love to hear from you. And that's it for me. So now I'm going to hand over to David, who's just going to say very briefly his vision for what he's doing within the project, and then Kathy's going to talk more about the Community Resilience Advocates. So I will hand over to you, David.
So what I have to say is very brief, really. So we go live on Facebook, and we were hoping to have, I don't know, 30 plus people viewing, and we very rarely get out of single figures. In a way, it doesn't matter because a lot of people are catching up later with the podcasts, but whether people listen to us later or whether they catch us live, we would really like to expand our, I don't quite know what you call it, constituency. We'd love to have more people listening to us, and we obviously haven't really worked out how to do that yet. So if you have any ideas about how we could get more engagement, how we could promote this, how we could get people already listening to promote it, do either pop a comment in the comments box or whatever format you catch us on. Just use the contact details that we've given so you can get in touch with us. Because we are scratching our heads on this one. It's not just that we have a vision for in terms of community engagement, in terms of people initiating projects, but we want this platform itself, this event, to be listened to more. So we just have that ripple effect. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Good point. Thank you for articulating that. Catherine, you indicated you wanted to add something.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to mention about workshops. I realised that wasn't in there. So something we are looking at as part of the official launch is to periodically hold workshop afternoons or days to work on some of the models we're talking about. So one is that we're looking at the moment, or we're offering at the moment, is with Sandra White's model. Possibly Kathy is thinking about doing one around work and money models. And we're
around money specifically.
Around money, okay, yeah. So again, that would be really helpful to have people's feedback. If you think, actually, I really enjoyed that talk, but I have no idea how to apply it to my life, get in touch, because we do have the opportunity to offer afternoon or day workshops to actually help people to kind of implement these ideas. And we're open to hearing what's going to be useful for people. So we're going to be offering those potentially periodically alongside the live talks. So I just thought I'd mention that. Thank you.
Grand, thank you for that. Okay, I'm gonna say more about the Community Resilience Advocates project. So we've set ourselves a target of having 100 people impacting their communities and telling us that they have done that. So we're offering to guide people through a 3-month process where you're supported to identify some aspect of one of your communities where you see that resilience is lacking. So you'll be guided to identify that and to think what's going to bring health and strength to your community. And then we will support you to create a plan to address that. We'll make it a 3-month plan. We're going to begin together in September. We're going to offer a pilot in September, and then there'll be 2 further 3-month projects next year. And we'll help people formulate projects, and then we're going to offer different ways of keeping you going. So if people get stuck on not engaging with their shyness in getting their community involved, or feeling like money's a block, or the things that normally stop people, we're going to have ways to support you through those blocks. So this is our plan. No project too big, no project too small. We already have a few people wanting to join in the first pilot, but everybody's welcome. So if you would like to join in, David, I think, has just posted on the Facebook Live comments. We've set up a Facebook page. There's nearly nothing on it right now, but it's the beginning. You can join that page and then you'll get updates. And we have, I have today made as an email address, which is communityresilienceadvocates@gmail.com. Also, I believe David has just put on Facebook, so you can be in touch. You can tell us you would like to join in this initiative. It will be free. It will be completely free, because that's my commitment. My commitment is the world is improved, and that we're not stopped by people needing to pay to improve the world. So that's the plan. I wrote down what I needed to say. I need to read my piece of paper and see if I've missed anything, so hold on. Oh, I could mention what is community, what is resilience, and what is advocacy. So your communities are anything you choose them to be. It could be your extended family, it could be your work colleagues, it could be your neighborhood, it could be people who share an interest with you. Any group that you feel can be called a group. Those are all your communities. Resiliency is the ability to maintain health in the face of whatever happens. If we're building a nourishing world, if we're building a future of our choice rather than being vulnerable to whatever may occur, this is an aspect to address. So we want to ensure that we are a united communities, and that does mean working with people that you wouldn't necessarily choose to work with. These are things that we will be addressing, how to handle all of the tricky dynamics, and we'll also be looking at what makes communities resilient. So some of it is networks, some of it is conflict resolution, some of it is visioning, creating how to decide on goals when everybody's got their different points of view. We'll be addressing these different things. Advocacy, I'm saying there's 3 levels to advocacy, depending on where you're coming from, what your time is, what your confidence levels are. So it may be great for you to join in something that's already existing that you wouldn't have had the impetus to get on with if we didn't encourage in this way. It may be having conversations. So advocacy can be just pointing out to people that these are things that we can all address, and that our world is the sum of all of us. And as much as we each contribute to building something, that's the extent to which our world will be created from positive intention, rather than slip into things that we don't want it to become, or be taken down roads with poor values. So I really hope that people get on board with the sense that we can build a world. The world is our oyster, especially with what's happened through COVID. So through COVID, so much has stopped, and it's an unprecedented opportunity to recreate. And the more people we have with that point of view, the more the world is built from intention and our values, rather than accident or dodgy values. So get on board. That's the second potential advocacy, was just having conversations. The third level of advocacy is to start initiatives. That can be huge, it can be small. We're up for supporting it all. If you would like to join in such an initiative, the pilot will be from September, and then we'll also run from January and through the summer as well. 3 months feels like a nice chunk. It's long enough to actually get some stuff done, but it's not such a large commitment that it's overwhelming to get involved with. We'll look to structure it so that it can be really supportive if that's what you need, but also it's something you can dip in and out of if you're a super busy person. If you would like to get involved, please join the Facebook page or email me, because it'll help me to know that people care and they want to get involved. It'll make me create a better program. So tell me, and then I'll get going. Otherwise I'll get distracted and do other things. Is there anything else I want to say about that? Collaboration. This is just being created. You could help create it. We could do with help building a website. We could do with more coaches on that project. If you have any experience coaching, join us, help us support everybody. I'd like to make some videos to help people with projects. So if you're any good at editing videos, I don't know anything about that, we could do with that sort of level of help. We're wondering about whether to have a network just on Facebook, which is really easy for us to run, but not everybody's on Facebook, or whether we should facilitate a network somewhere else, a communication, so there can be peer-to-peer support. We'd value other people's views on that. There's pros and cons from different approaches, so please give us your views. I think that's all I have to say on that. Catherine has a point. Tell me.
Yeah, I guess I was just wanting to clarify. So it's going to be 3 cohorts that you're going to run through the year. Is that right? Yeah, three cohorts.
Yes, and people can do all of them. So the reason for structuring it that way, really, because we set ourselves this goal. We set ourselves a goal of having 100 people saying these talks are effective, it's making me impact my communities. I want to practice, so I'm calling the first one a pilot. And then I think we'll grow. So we're presuming 3 different launches with a month in between for us to implement improvements, look at what we've learnt, improve things. But people can do all of them, or people can join whenever it suits them in the year.
In terms of the commitment, is it so there's going to be some peer-to-peer support that they can drop in and out of, and will there be kind of a regular workshops or spaces together, or
I am still figuring that out. I can't answer that question right now. It may be that, well, if I were helped to do it, what I would like to do is set up kind of a course that you can follow at your own speed. So how to design a project. Some people will know all this kind of stuff really well. It's things like having a clear goal, giving yourself milestones so that you can see if you're on track or not. Looking at what resources you need, both in terms of personal growth and what community you need. So it's addressing how to form a project in that way. In an ideal world, I would have created all of that so that people can just access it when it's convenient for them. But I think it's also probably worth us having a live launch workshop. Maybe it's a Saturday, maybe it's a day, maybe it's a few evenings. I think probably a day is better, so that everybody gets going together. One of the pitfalls of a project is that your goals are not helpful. So I'd like there to be peer support to make sure that people's goals are ecologically sound, are enjoyable for the individual. It's rather too easy in this sector to take on a lot of pressure oneself and become overwhelmed and serious and ill. And I have joy as one of my fundamental commitments to this initiative. Joy is, if a community has joy, it really adds to the resilience of the community. So you need a goal that is joyful for you. And it needs to be something that honors the risks of our planet, and build something good in our current world, and honors that future situation. And those can be very much at odds. So we're looking to support people in generating goals that are respectful of those paradoxes, those contrasting needs. There's no point in putting a whole pile of effort into a project that does damage to our world. So that's obviously a fundamental aspect. So we look at having a workshop that helps people launch in that way. And then I'm imagining, I'm sorry, I haven't got this really sorted. I'm imagining we might as well have a similar structure, have a day every month. So maybe there'd be the 4 sessions, a launch, after a month, after 2 months, and at the end, to keep people in momentum, look at where people are getting stuck, offer coaching. Yeah, that's my plan. I haven't got it sussed. I'm sorry, I can't give you an exact shape, but it's work in progress.
Evolving. It's naturally, organically evolving, isn't it? Yeah. So that's what we're generally working with all of this. So, and I will hopefully be involved with some of that somewhere. So yeah, we'll see how it evolves. Yeah, thank you. And no project is too small. I'm going to sign up. I'm signing up for the pilot project as a community resilience advocate. And one thing I'm working on at the moment is I live in a building with a number of other people, and I'm working on a community food buying project in my building. So that's something just a simple thing I'm doing, but hopefully it's a bit more resourceful than what we're all doing at the moment. And so no project too small. It's all worthwhile.
Which is the point, actually. People could run concurrent projects for themselves, couldn't they? They could take on a completely different initiatives.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, my sense of what we've talked about with it so far is we're happy just to kind of mold around what's needed. What do people want to do and what's needed within that, and then we can kind of respond to that, be responsive to that as well. So yeah. Cool, thank you. I look forward to seeing how that develops.
Me too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Great. So yeah, I'm aware we're kind of nearly out of time. Thanks for the conversation, and really nice to have you with us, Oliver. It's nice to have someone who's just been following the project and given us that perspective. It's been really nice to hear. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
And I very much hope we will have you back at some point in the next series. Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, great. So just to mention, yeah, next week is the last week of our pilot series. We are doing part 2 of Work and Money. So we have Kathy back again, and Viviana Jimenez. I don't know if I've said that right. I'm sorry if I haven't, Viviana. So they'll both be back with us again, who were part of part 1. And we have this lovely woman, Marianella, who is a professor from Venezuela, who's going to be sharing her story about what's happening in Venezuela and what the people, the indigenous people, and her family and community are doing there to actually commit to staying in the midst of a real crisis, and what we can learn from that. So I'm really looking forward to having that conversation, and that will be our last conversation for the pilot series. Oh, Oliver, what's that? Transition Town. Oh, do you want to say about that?
Well, it's just to say that it's something that's helped feed into kind of joining, feeling that you're part of maybe an idea that's already happening elsewhere. And the Transition Town Bounce Forward initiative has been running these sort of visioning workshops, and I think there's a link that I've just put in the chat that maybe David can put further out. I don't know. There have been many initiatives to kind of work on visioning, and I think it's kind of useful to sometimes link up to other networks that
absolutely, yeah,
you could learn from. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, so hopefully, yeah, David's now going to share that on the Facebook Live, and I will also share that on the YouTube and stuff like that as well, if anyone's listening back on that. Thank you all very much, and wishing you all well on this rainy, I don't know if it's raining where you are, but it's very rainy here today. So on this rainy evening, thank you all, and thanks David L. He's disappeared, but hopefully he's still there. Thanks for your contributions, and thank you particularly Kathy and David for what you've done so far in helping to do a lot of the background of this project, of which there is much. I'm really grateful for your support. So I'll see you both next week, and I'll see you hopefully soon, Oliver, as well.
Yes, thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Commute.